my restaurant application capstone presentation. My name's Danielle Berg, and we'll be covering part 1 in this video. We'll be talking about the front-end architecture, authentication, and overviewing an app diagram I created. We're going to go ahead and get started with the app diagram. Bear with me as I'm new to creating diagrams, and this is what I was able to come up with. I try to differentiate between how a guest might use my app versus how the front end interacts with the middleware and the back end. And so, for instance, someone might enter the app, might sign in. This act is shown by the pink arrow, and then the front end interacts with Strapi in the middleware that comes with Strapi, and then goes to my database, which is Postgre. And then that information is bounced back to the front end. Same thing happens just with one extra step when you place an order. It not only contacts Strapi and Postgre, but it also contacts Stripe in terms of authorizing the payment and making sure that all goes through. So the interaction that the guest has with the app is demonstrated by the pink arrows, and how the front end, back end, and middleware communicate are highlighted by the black arrows. That wraps up the diagram. Let's move on to talking about the front end architecture. The component architecture of the front end is shown here in this image. We also have separate pages for login, register, and checkout. I didn't really add anything new other than an extra component that was not included in the starter code. In terms of UI design decisions, I really focused on being user-friendly, trying to think about how might a guest or a user use my app, which pathways would they take, where are potential areas for confusion, how to prevent that. Next.js and the functionality it brings really didn't impact my design decisions, mostly because I'm new to Next.js and I didn't have the time to really delve into what it could bring to this project. However, I did really enjoy the router function, as I found it was extremely useful, simple to use, and allowed you to move from page to page without refreshing and losing context. The next topic of conversation is about authentication. This app brings two methods of authentication: JWT tokens, which comes with Strapi, and Google OAuth. Now, JWT tokens I didn't really have to struggle with, as it was built in, and once I got Strapi working, it worked fine. Google OAuth is an extra added provider that we can use through Strapi, and I chose it thinking that I had a little bit of experience using Firebase to use Google OAuth, and so I thought it would be easy. Very wrong. Struggled for days, looked at documentation, I watched videos, and nothing was helping, and so I ended up reaching out to an experienced coder and getting some support there, and they helped walk me through the process and figure out where I was going wrong and what was happening. Lastly, we're going to be talking about the payment provider Stripe. Stripe came with the project. I didn't have to choose which payment provider I wanted to use. In this image here, you can see a little bit of a diagram on how the payment provider Stripe works. First off, the cardholder enters the merchant site. Maybe that's online. It goes through the acquirer, which might be the same as the issuing bank, depending on the structure, but in this case, it's two different places. The acquirer reaches out to the issuing bank responds, and the acquirer replies back to the merchant. In terms of challenges in setting it up, there wasn't too much difficulty in the initial setup. The struggle I came with was when I was trying to refactor my code or change different functionalities. I would sometimes break the code and find that I wouldn't be able to access Stripe anymore, so I had to go back and figure out what I did wrong and how to fix it. And that wraps up this video. Thanks for listening.